I will just also mention that I got it real quick from Frank Culbertson. You know Frank.
Oh, nice guy.
Frank and Mike Rogers and those guys out there trying to keep Portland wrestling alive and in the news. Said, hey, Jim and Brian, I just checked the Forbes updated daily list of billionaires. And once again, Tony Khan is not on it. However, Shad Khan is $11.8 billion. Still no sign of Tony.
Well, that's because Tony's billions are included in Shad's billions, because that's really what they are.
So you mean that when Shad has billions and billions, then it just it's that's where trickle-down economics works.
That's the true trickle-down economics. I mean, when people come out and tell you that Tony Khan on his own is a billionaire, or that Tony Khan on his own is a successful businessman before AEW, any of these things, it's laughable. His father's a billionaire because of his patent. They have spent the money they've made, and it's a lot of money, on various things like sports teams and super yachts. And because he's the son of the guy with the money, he's been put in charge of all these things, given his own little analytics company. You never hear anything about that anymore. And given AEW with a budget of reportedly $100 million or so for talent, that's the reality of it. You know, I don't know why they feel like they have to hide from it and pretend like Tony is an independent, self-made businessman. It's ridiculous.
What?
It's ridiculous. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Look, I wish my dad had Shad Khan's money and just left it to me. That'd be amazing. I'd right now be sitting in my library made of limestone. It would be amazing. But instead, I'm here.
Wait a minute. You would be in a library made of limestone?
If I had Shad Khan's money, if I inherited it, I would buy a giant property of land and kind of start rebuilding Manhattan from 1920. And I would just have these beautiful limestone fucking buildings and Gilded Age mansions all over the place.
See, no.
And no horses. See, that's the benefit of it. You could have all of that, no horses, no early cars, and all the pollution. It could be a utopia. What I'm saying is, give me your money, Tony.
No, but see now, look, you're material there.
What?
You're living in a material world, and you, Brian, are a material girl. Because remember, we talked about this a few years ago.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, didn't that Madonna do that in a song? Oh! After she says she's a material girl?
It sounded more like Michael Jackson.
Oh.
Spinning around, getting ready to beat it is what it sounded like to me. But nevertheless, we talked about this years ago on the program when everybody was talking about a billion. Tony Khan's a billionaire. Vince McMahon is a billionaire. The other guy's a billionaire. Whatever. I said, why does anybody need $1 billion? And we broke this down. That here's $1 billion. So you immediately give 35% over to the various state and local and federal taxing agencies.
AKA the crooks.
And you got $650 million.
It's not enough.
Now, hold on now.
Not enough.
Now, let's say you've got 25 friends. You want to give them $1 million. Now you got $625 million. Now you say you got 10 family members. You give them $5 million. Now you got $575 million. Let's say give $100 million to cure crippled children. $475 million. $100 million to cure cancer. $375 million. I mean, goddamn, $100 million for innocent homeless animals. Where was I down to? Is that 375 or 275?
I don't know. I don't like this charitable Jim Cornette shit. What is this?
Then you say, well, fuck, I've still got, how am I ever going to spend 275 million? I'm going to give all my friends another goddamn $2 million, $50 million, and 25 more million. There's $200 million. And how can for the rest of your life, could you ever spend $200 million?
I would buy a giant piece of land and I would start reconstructing 1920s Manhattan. Limestone buildings, libraries, the old Penn Station, all these things that are gone, bring them back because I have limitless amounts of money. And you know what else? I can control it. It's my land. I can control everything, have my own police force. Kind of like what Disney tried to do at Epcot before he died. My own private Epcot where I can make a better society for everyone who I allow.
Okay, how about this? With the $200 whatever million that I had left over that I just talked about, I could spend $25 million and buy the acreage around me to where that I could just flatten everything, plant trees, and live in the middle of a fucking 500-acre Central Park, and I'd still have $100 goddamn whatever million dollars.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop until I have a giant limestone mansion. I'm not going to stop until I have like 75 acres and like a 40,000 square foot limestone mansion.
And before you say a goddamn word, my lawnmowers just showed up.
You see, and the unprofessionalism, once again, on his own show from Castle Cornette, from Mr. Charity here. That's why he has to give away so much money, because of how much damage he does to everyone's ears listening to this show.
The screwy weather last week, they couldn't come, and the lawn is shaggy. Are you wanting me to get one of these tick-borne illnesses from having overgrown grass because I told them not to come when they could come because they couldn't come last week? Yeah, you want me to be in hospital too?
All kidding aside about, giving away all this money, which is just ridiculous.
Oh,
you're already giving away enough of it to the federal government. Don't give away any more. If you had,
I don't mind giving it to people who deserve it. That's why there's so few of them. Basically, the crippled children and the homeless animals and the people that have cancer.
Give them enough time, they'll disappoint you too. My point is, let's just say Jim Cornette has $600 million at his disposal.
Yeah.
Would you build like a giant wrestling museum and you have
a museum?
You have to think about all the things you have.
Where are the people sending emails talking about how I pronounce Nevada and nobody says anything about you saying museum?
I have a New York accent. People are used to it. We rule the world. New York's number
one.
What
was your question?
Would you build a wrestling museum library with your collection, with other things you can get? Like, we need an independent body that's not WWE to do something. And if you had Tony Khan's money, wouldn't you try to do something to preserve wrestling history, the real history?
If I were the king of the forest. Yeah, as a matter of fact, if I had hundreds of millions of dollars at my disposal, yes, I will make it no secret, I probably would buy a number of other vintage wrestling collectible items and things and such of that nature. And I would probably endow, since I would be so well endowed, I would probably endow a foundation after I'm gone, because it would make me too nervous to see the general public wandering around through my collection. But after I'm gone, they could set up a fucking brick and mortar, as they say, museum, and let people come in there and look around at all the wonders contained therein.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we used to go, sometimes we'd camp to Sagamore Hill, which was Teddy Roosevelt's home on Long Island, and they preserved it. They made it look like the original. On the inside, it looked like just a giant log cabin in a lot of ways, but just dead animals everywhere, and it was...
Now what?
On the walls. It's Teddy Roosevelt's place.
Oh, I thought you meant it was like just been the old days where there were just dead animal carcasses lying around the fucking living room or some shit.
No, Bull and Moose Party. That's what Teddy Roosevelt was known for, just killing animals, cutting off their heads, and hanging it on the wall.
Stop it now.
But it's a very nice place.
You have a barbaric, animalistic tribute to a animal murderer up there. We have Farmington down here. They've renovated that also to be of the period like 1812. It was built by a personal friend of Abraham Lincoln's, big mansion with these high ceilings and the wonderful antiquery, and no one was slain and had their heads put on pikes and stuck out in the front yard like whatever your people did up there.
We had a place, they're still there on Long Island, Old Bethpage. And it's like a village.
I remember Old Bethpage. You know what? As a matter of fact, Ricky Morton told me one time, said he walked into a bar and there was old Beth Page, and she was a looker in those days. And he went up to her and he said, "You know what, Beth? I'd like a little pussy." And she said, "I would too. Mine's as big as a hat." But go ahead.
All right. Well, let's get away from old Beth Page that hangs out in the bars with Ricky Morton. Old Beth Page on Long Island is like a village that I guess is from like 300 years ago or so. So they have like all the old houses and all the old beds, and they're just people wearing
Wait
outfits.
a minute. Is it the same mattresses?
I don't know. I mean, it's replica at minimum, but I mean, they've had this stuff there for a long time.
When you need them.
They're not living there. It's just kind of they're showing you how people live, but they have people dressed up and acting roles.
Well, people, if they've got beds in there, somebody's going to lay down in them eventually. If they're showing you how they lived in the old days, then that would be part of it. And here's a person sleeping in this shitty old 300-year-old bed made out of goddamn goose feathers and fucking spit.
One day years ago, we needed something to do. It was me, an old ex-girlfriend of mine, and my brother. And we're like, hey, why don't we go to Old Beth Page? Like we used to go with like camp and stuff. We went there. There was no one there. It was just us. So all these people are like putting on the show, like house by house for us. Here's the woman churning butter. Here's the guy milking the cow. It was just, there was no one else there. It was bizarre and cool.
How did the cow feel about being milked for an audience?
I don't know.
Isn't that something they'd rather do in private?
And you wonder what they think. They're just staring. All this is happening and people staring at them.
I remember the first cow I ever milked. And
what was her name?
Well, actually, come to find out, it was George.
Old Beth
So
Page?
that was a disappointing experience.
It was Old Beth Page.
It was Old Beth Page.
That's going to be DDP's manager in a few years. Diamond Dallas and Old Beth Page.
And they'll be very positive.